my precious little dragons, welcome back to my channel. So it has been a hot second since I sat down to film a book look, but that is okay. I'm getting back into the swing of things. I'm finally getting my energy back. It will be okay. It's fine. This quarantine shall not defeat me. I am ready to hop into this book look. I am reviewing and doing a book look for The Steep and Thorny Way by Kat Winters. I am super stoked about this one because, and I'm just gonna tell you this up front, I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads. I haven't done a 5-star review on Goodreads in a while, but this one deserved it. I loved it so much. And I'm just going to spend the next however many minutes raving about it and creating a 1920s inspired look. Did I consider doing a faux bob on my hair because time period? Yes. Did I? Nah. Too much effort. Too much time. It's not worth it. It's too much. So, with that, let us delve into the wonderful world of The Steep and Thorny Way. So, this is a Hamlet retelling. So, as you all know, well, I hope you all know, I'm a bit of a Shakespeare nerd. I love pretty much everything to do with Shakespeare. It makes me happy. Makes my heart sing. I have multiple copies of the first folio. I have other Shakespeare retellings in my book collection. I just love pretty much everything that is Shakespeare related in general. So, was this meant to be a surefire hit? Not necessarily, but basically yes. I am going to quick run through our super snappy summary of The Steep and Thorny Way. And then we're gonna go over some general notes and then we will delve into our spoiler territory. Now you may be asking, okay, come on, Hamlet has existed for hundreds of years. We know how Hamlet goes. Why do you need a spoiler tag? Well, I will tell you. Because this is a Hamlet retelling and it does not follow every single tenet of the original, there are some surprise twists in there that if you don't want them spoiled for you, that's the reason for the spoiler tag. Let's get into our super snappy summary. So, this is a Hamlet retelling that takes place in the small town of Elston, Oregon in the early, mid-1920s. So Hanley, our Hamlet, is a biracial girl. She's trying to uncover the truth of her father Hank's mysterious death on Christmas Eve, the night before, on Christmas Eve 2 years prior. So this has haunted her ever since, and she basically gets wind that her father's ghost has been haunting the road where he was hit by a car and died. And at the start of our tale, the pastor's kid who was convicted of hitting and killing Hank has just gotten out of prison. He has returned, but his parents don't want anything to do with him, so he's just kind of out there, and kind of all of this mystery is coming to a head, and Hanley is satisfied no longer. She needs to know the truth. After she takes the Necromancer's Nectar, which is a potion she got from Mildred Marks, she speaks with her father's ghost along the highway that he has been haunting since his death. So in true Hamlet-like fashion, she is convinced that this is her uncle Clyde, who has married her mother. So she goes about the whole Hamlet-y route of trying to expose Uncle Clyde and along the way hopefully uncover exactly what happened to her father, as parts of that night is still covered in mystery. So, oh, I forgot to state the name of the boy who hit him. So Joe is the boy who hit Hank. Wow, I strayed way off the beaten path. So I may have to hodgepodge that, hodgepodge. May have to mush that together to get a decent summary, but that's pretty much it. So, let's take a drink of our Coca-Cola and get back into it. That's period accurate. I had Coca-Cola in the 1920s. Actually, because it was Prohibition era, soft drinks became boomin', as they say, because Prohibition, which actually does have some grip in this story. As I said, because this is 1920s inspired, I am going to be doing a soft, rounded, starlit kind of 1920s inspired look. So it's going to be mostly neutrals, although I did read some interesting stuff that they did, because they did start to get eyeshadows in the 1920s. They did kind of experiment with some colors, usually trying to match the color of your eyes to the color of your eyeshadow, but it was more soft. It wasn't quite as vibrant as it would be in later decades. The fun thing about having 2 eyebrow hairs is I can basically make the shape look like whatever I want it to, and it's fine. So I'm actually going to do my base first because I want to kind of cover my eyebrows with my foundation, and then I will pencil over the very thin, rounded eyebrows of the 1920s. Then I will give myself some doe-like eyes, some blood red lips, and the blood red also suits the Hamlet because blood, murder, intrigue. Okay, that's enough. Let's get started. So, okay, as I already told you, this isn't already done, is it? There's way more in there than that. Get it together, Becca. Oh, I should have used Born This Way. That would have fit the story theme better. I'll mix a little bit of Born This Way because it fits. It's fine. That's funny. I didn't realize. I thought Born This Way was lighter, but it's ever so slightly. Actually, I guess it's not. Yeah, it is ever so slightly darker. I did not know that. Okay, as I said, this is a 5-star read for me. It was so phenomenal. I literally I consumed this book in just an afternoon. I could not put it down. I just was wholly entranced by this read. And the nice thing about a Hamlet retelling is that it reads like a story. So getting a retelling that is in a novel form and meant to be read, meant to be consumed in that format is just really nice because it's a lot more, it takes that same story that I love from Shakespeare, from the stage, and just adapts it and twists it a little bit. And I mean, for me, Shakespeare retellings kind of fall into the same format as like fairy tale retellings, which I also love, because it just takes this very, very well-known classic story and just runs with it. And the fun thing about Shakespeare, I mean, this is something that they've been doing in theater for ages. I mean, they don't always set it in the, 1600s Denmark? Nah, they set it in whatever they want to set it in. I've seen everything from that to fantasy, you know, different decades, your 1920s, your 1940s, I've seen 60s, you know, there's different ways you can reinterpret, keeping the exact same source material. And then this one, which retells it and then shifts that source material a little. It's just fascinating, and I love to see the creativity that the authors bring to it while keeping the spirit of the original source material. And this one was interesting because the author was very, very deliberate in where she chose to break from the original story. And it's no secret, I love to read the author's notes at the end of the books. I think that that is a really, really good, solid way to appreciate details that weren't really on your radar as you were reading through it. I would say that holds true for this book as well. This book deals with a lot of heavy topics. I thought that it was really, really well researched, and you could tell that through just reading, but you could also, gained a deeper appreciation for it once you actually read the author's note and saw just how much time and effort she put into researching it and making her environment realistic for the setting of her novel. So I'm using this palette. May also have to dig into a couple other little palettes, but we shall see. Okay, so I'm pretty sure how I first caught wind of this book was in an Atmospheric Reads recommendations, and I'm pretty sure it was Murphy Napier. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing her name right, but I'm pretty sure that's where I first heard of this book. It did not disappoint when it came to that. The descriptions in this book are so captivating. They're practically tangible, and I was just fully transported into the story. I haven't read a book like that in a while that just has such good, like, compelling descriptions. And this author's writing style, like, it felt like a classic work of art where you just want to sit there and just, like, absorb the beauty. That's how I felt about her writing style. It was just so gorgeous. That, like, if for nothing else, like, you don't have to be a fan of Shakespeare to like this book, but you can tell the thought and effort that was put into making this a spirited retelling, but also a beautiful novel in its own right. And I just absolutely adored it. That was a little warm toned from what I was expecting, but it's fine. It's fine. May actually also be dipping into the Too Faced because I need some more neutral tones. I'm gonna take Haute Chocolate. I know that's not the spelling of hot, but whatever. Honestly, if you're just looking for a read that just is utterly captivating and will transport you into the time and place, give this book a read. Like I said, it's not a long read. I finished it in an afternoon. Like, in addition to keeping the spirit of the original, whether you're a classics lover or a mystery lover or thriller, historical fiction, I mean, this book has a little bit of everything, honestly. So basically what I'm saying is, no matter what genre, read it. Maybe not romance. It's not really a romance, but Hamlet wasn't a romance either, so that's fine. So I'm actually going to give you 2 warnings before we move on. The first warning is just your general spoiler warning. So from this point on, there will be spoilers related to the plot. The second warning is a sensitive content warning. So this book, because it features a biracial girl in the 1920s, well, this is not, you know, we're not in the deep south, but that doesn't mean racism did not exist in the North in the 1920s. I mean, it exists today, so obviously it existed then, whatever. There are some scenes that are very intense and hard to read. The author did shy away from using, you know, like as many derogatory terms as she could. She mentioned that in her author's note, but there is some definite racism. There is some, this book does feature the KKK, so if that is just too much for you to read, that is totally okay. This may not be the book for you, that's fine. Alright, so I just wanted to give you guys those 2 warnings right up front. Like I said, if you feel uncomfortable at any time, feel free to just stop with this episode. I have plenty of other videos that you can watch that don't really have triggering content, so feel free to move on to those. With that being said, let's go ahead and move into our more spoiler-filled discussion. So the first thing we're going to cover is our characters and how those echo the original story, and then we're going to move on to plot, how that echoes the original, and then we'll tie up with some final notes. And of course I will have the timestamp down below for my final look and thoughts if you want to skip all the spoilery stuff. Alright, let's get into characters. So like I said, our main 4 are pretty obvious. So Hanali is Hamlet, her mother Greta is Gertrude, Uncle Clyde is Claudius, and Hank is her father's ghost. I need to figure out what shade I'm using. Force Truffle? Yeah, let's try that. After that, it becomes slightly more confusing as to which characters are which. I mean, not like overly, but kind of. So I would say, like, generally speaking, and there's some crossover with the characters, a little bit, but generally speaking, Fleur is Hanali's best friend, and she is Ophelia. Got that flower theme kind of going. Joe, who, as I mentioned, was the boy, the pastor's kid who was convicted of hitting and killing Hank, is generally Horatio. Fleur's brother Leo is Laertes. There's 2 characters called Robbie and Jill, or Robbie and Gil, probably Gil. Robbie and Gil Wigan, who are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Although I should note, they are much more antagonistic, less duncy than in the OG. So Polonius never really shows up. Like, he, Mrs. Polly Paulison, who is theoretically the Polonius, she doesn't really do anything. She's just not really present in the story. Laertes is, Laertes. Leo is very present in the story. Fleur is kind of ish. I mean, she's somewhat pivotal. She kind of shows up, but it's really more about Hanali and Joe and this unraveling of the mystery around her father's death. So the story starts off with Hanali taking a gun and going to where she has heard Joe is hiding. She heard that Laertes, I'm gonna keep messing up these character names. She's heard that Leo is currently hiding Joe in their barn. The 2 share their property lines. Like, it's Hanali's house and then Leo and Fleur's house, and then the woods are in between their 2 properties. So she goes with the intention to shoot Joe for killing her father. And then when she gets there, I mean, she knows how to shoot, but she kind of gives him a warning shot, like just whew, by his cheek. And he says, basically, don't kill me, I didn't kill your father. It wasn't me. It was your Uncle Clyde, who, as I mentioned, is the doctor. And so what Joe says happened is that, like, he did actually legitimately hit Frank, but he had a broken leg. There wasn't really anything wrong with him. Like, he seemed like he wasn't a man, like he was about to die. They called Dr. Clyde, and when Dr. Clyde went in, some time passed, and then when he came out, Hank was dead. And so Joe is saying, your Uncle Clyde probably killed your father to get to your mother. He not only doesn't know whether to believe him at first, and she definitely doesn't trust him, because I mean, he still hit her dad, but you know, he's like, she's just not sure. She's very confused. She doesn't know what to believe, which, I mean, that's fair. I wouldn't know what to believe in that situation. Like, he's not really a love interest for Hanali. It's more just like she kind of has like a mild, like, you're hot crush on him at the beginning of the book, but it doesn't super duper go anywhere for reasons that we will get into in a hot second. So there's that. Our Polonius, Mrs. Paulison, never really shows up, so she also doesn't die. She doesn't get stabbed behind a curtain by our Hamlet. So that was interesting, because I was expecting that the entire way through. Like, as I started the book, I was expecting it to stick a lot more closely to the original than it did, plot-wise. And I know we're not quite at the plot part yet, but like, I was just kind of waiting for it. I was like, she never really showed up, so she didn't have a chance to die. So I worried about other characters, but I did not worry about Mrs. Paulison all that much. So I should mention that there was one moment where I was confused about who was supposed to be the Ophelia, because there's one part where they're worried that Joe has died, and they spot like, it's reported that there was a lookalike. There was someone, I think a county down, who looked like Joe floating in the river, and I thought that was the Ophelia moment, you know, died by suicide, you know, drowning, water, like, all they had to say was there was flowers surrounding him, you know, I don't know. But it turned out not to be Joe, just truly a boy that looked somewhat vaguely like him. But I was just, it made me kind of question myself, like, wait, is Fleur supposed to be Horatio? Am I losing my mind? Who's supposed to be the Ophelia here? So, no, it's still Joe. No, Joe. Sorry, Princess Diaries reference. Totally fits with my Hamlet Shakespearean sensibilities. So Fleur, she's somewhat absent for most of the book. I mean, she's emotional support for Hanali, but she doesn't do a ton that's super plot related other than be emotional support. Fleur does not die, which I was happy about. There is no suicide from Fleur. Yay. She does provide the kind of plants and flowers, so that theme kind of stays, and that's more symbolic with the original. And her grandmother was a healer, so Fleur grows lots of things. So that does come in throughout the book, and I thought that was some good symbolism. She's a pretty soft and sweet side character. I'm very glad how her story arc ended with Hanali's. It was good. I was very happy with Fleur as a side character. Good job. Alright, Mildred, who is the other kind of young female in there, and she's the one I'm not really sure. I don't even know if she has a counterpart in the original. I'm sure she does, and it's just making me blank, but she's the one who gave Hanali the necromancer's nectar to be able to talk to her father's ghost. And Mildred did this because she says that her father's ghost has been haunting the highway where he got hit, and this is somewhat common knowledge, but she said he showed up at her house and was bothering her family, and like, if Hanali couldn't get rid of him, like, keep him from going to her house, her mother was gonna have him exorcised. She was kind of a foil to Fleur, which I thought was interesting. Mildred even mentions it. She says, Fleur's grandmother may have been a healer, but mine was an occultist. So Mildred, well, her family does some, like, brewing of illegal alcohol and stuff like that, but she also just brews potions on the side. You know, got a little bit of that mystical side. It's all good. And she ended up being surprisingly pivotal to the plot, and aside from just being the one that supplies the necromancer's nectar. So I thought that was interesting how they kind of brought her back in. It seemed it's a very tightly woven plot. Notice how, like, I feel like it's a good book when, in order to talk about how good the characters are, you kind of have to talk about how integral they are to the plot, like how everything is just so tightly woven. So, I mean, I think that's a good thing anyway. I'm going to talk about Lawrence and Clyde in the plot section because with their characters, I've been calling him Leo. His name is Lawrence. My gosh. I'm going to talk about them in the plot section because I pretty much cannot talk about their characters or their arcs without talking about the plot. There's basically no way to do that. Sorry, I'm trying to make my eyes as like big and rounded as I can. Not quite sure how it's going so far, but I'm trying. Greta very much emulates Gertrude to me. And by that I mean that she's a good woman. She's just portrayed as a little weak in comparison to Hanali, but Hanali does love her mother, and so those dynamics seem very similar. Greta's just kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. She's caught in a terrible situation, but she does really seem to love Clyde. They were childhood friends, but given that the very fact that she was in an interracial marriage in 1905 already lends itself to Greta having more agency and bravery than we see out of the original Gertrude. And Greta definitely has moments where you see her spirit of perseverance just come through, particularly in the latter half of the book. Like in the beginning you see more of just that like weak Gertrude-ishness, and then at the end it's more just like she's like, okay, we're gonna get through this together, it'll be fine, and you see more of that agency, which I thought was really cool. So now we get to Hanali and Joe, our two main friends. So I love Hanali's fierceness. She is 110% a Gryffindor. And by that I mean the stubborn, doesn't think, jumps into it kind of Gryffindor. Like, I mean, I'm not that type of Gryffindor, but like, I mean, that's more your stereotypical, I don't care, let's get it kind of. Oh my goodness, I just wiped away some of that stuff I just built up, dang it. You definitely see that in Hanali, and I just love it. And it's great because even though she is a little bit fiery, that is nothing compared to Joe's fieriness. I mean, he just wants to straight up murder Uncle Clyde. He's like, I'll help you do it. I want him to pay for what he did to me, for what he did to you. Let's get him. Hanali tempers him a little bit. Like, they're both headstrong and stubborn, but she thinks slightly more than Joe does. Slightly. But I just love how their friendship develops, and she just has so much agency and willingness to get things done. And the thing about their friendship is it doesn't feel forced, even with it being a somewhat short book, and it's not like they really knew each other all that much before he was convicted and went to prison. It was more just like they both have some similarities, and one of those is that Joe is gay, which it's the 1920s, and things are a little rough for Joe, and he's also a pastor's kid in the 1920s. Hanali is a biracial girl. They kind of connect, not just over this mystery of how her father died. They're not only connected by that, but they're connected by their differences and by how they're looked down upon by society. And so that kind of forces their friendship and their level of trust in each other to develop a little faster than it normally would, but you still see some aspects of, like, should I really trust you? Is this the right choice? You see Hanali kind of struggle with some of those things. Like, she's like, I'm kind of forced to trust you, but am I making the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? And so I really appreciated that, and it made it seem that much more realistic because you saw her struggle with it. It wasn't just a perfect, like, one and done, okay, you said you didn't kill my father, so now I trust you 100% and we're best friends. But I liked how their friendship and their trust in each other developed. It was good stuff. And you know I'm a hardcore character lover. I will appreciate a really good in-depth plot, but you give me good characters and I will suck that ish up. I love it. What is that voice? Alright, let's try this one, see what happens. Hanali, I mean, they did have something to go off of because you really wanted her to emulate Hamlet, and Hamlet is a very, very complex character, and I mean, to the point where, I mean, Shakespearean scholars disagree on how he's supposed to be interpreted, and of course every actor kind of brings something to that discussion, but it's really, like, they really have that in-depth argument about, okay, did Hamlet go mad? Is he for real? Did he actually see his father's ghost? No, this story, there's no ambiguity about whether the ghost is real or not. The ghost is very real. The ghost is real. There's some supernatural stuff happening. 'Tis what it is. So there's not really that ambiguity, but that choice really kind of amplifies Hanalee's personality and character. I just thought pretty much everything with her was done really well, if you couldn't tell. Okay, so back on to Hanalee and Joe. So as I mentioned, they kind of fall into a very halting friendship, and I loved it. But I love how, because they have to kind of fall into this in their misfits together, they also have to protect each other, and there's little things that are brought back that just really tie the whole plot together. Like at the very beginning I mentioned the bullet was past his ear, not his cheek, but him knowing how good of a marksman she is. Like they talk about, like, Joe has never had a kind touch in his life. Like there's deep moments like that where they have like a lot harder, more realistic, deeper conversations that really happen with good friends, and then moments like, I like honeycomb, and like all of this stuff just kind of comes full circle, which I really appreciate. I love some well-rounded characters, and I love well-rounded friendships. I love it. And it's mostly because Joe is gay, but it doesn't end in a romance, and that makes this friendship so much better, because you could see where they could have tried to do it like, well, he was actually bisexual, so I mean, like, they can be together technically. No, he's just gay. They're friends. It's good. It's all good. Those were my character notes. Basically, I loved them all. That leads me into my plot notes. So, as I mentioned, this is a very, very good book. So, with the very good book comes very good character and very good plot. I mean, it drew from the best, so what could it do but be good? Haha. That was so dark. Let's take Haute Chocolate for a sec. Haute. Is it hot? Haute? H-U-T-E. How do you pronounce that? Anyway, so it kind of reminded me of like the BBC Sherlock, if you've ever seen it, where they had their first episode was called A Study in Pink and it was modeled after the Arthur Conan Doyle original A Study in Scarlet. And what was interesting about the way they did the retelling, and why it reminded me kind of Steep and Thorny Way, is that they took a moment, like a pivotal moment in the plot that kind of, they followed it up until this point, and then it turned. So the moment in BBC Sherlock, which I guess spoilers if you haven't watched that, but there's a murder that happens, and in A Study in Scarlet, the word Rache is written. And they found out that Rache, I mean, it's German for revenge, and from that point on, with that murder, like that was their jumping point. That's how the story was filtered from then on. When in the BBC version, they saw this lady having scratched out the word Rache, it wasn't actually Rache, it was Rachel, her daughter's name. And so, like, that was kind of that pivotal turning point where you could tell that they were going to keep aspects of the original, but this is where they're saying, this is our own story, we're going to kind of do our own thing with it, and we're going to divert the path a little bit, but they're going to kind of run parallel. That's kind of what it reminded me of. So, when Hanalee talks to her father's ghost, and her dad basically says, and he does not want her to kill anybody, he does not want revenge. And that's another kind of difference between the original book. He wants her to be careful. He says he's so sorry, he should have taken better care of himself. It was kind of his fault that he died, da 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 da. Like, he cares about Hanalee, he wants what's best for her. And then he said, I blame it all on the doc. Now, Hanalee takes this how the original story would have taken it. Hanalee originally takes this to assume that he means Doc Clyde, and they kind of run with it. And then they discover later on in the story that there's another meaning of the dock. So there's a restaurant that's called the Dry Dock. Before the Prohibition, it used to just be called the Dock. And so this comes into play. There's that change of the entire direction of the plot just due to like that one little thing. They had the place, the thing. So of course, Hanalee doesn't have a roaming bunch of actors come in and put on a show for Doc Clyde, but she opens the Bible to the story of David and Bathsheba, which, in case you're not familiar, is the story of when King David lusted after a woman named Bathsheba, and because he was the king, he put Bathsheba's husband on the front lines of a battle. He subsequently died so he could marry Bathsheba. But anyway, Hanali opened the Bible to that story to try and get a sense of Clyde's guilt, which obviously this made Clyde very angry, which played into the idea that Clyde was guilty. You're just like, okay, obviously he's guilty. He got really upset at this, which one of the biggest plot twists, which, double spoiler, skip a few seconds ahead if you really don't want the spoiler, it wasn't Uncle Clyde. Like, and even when we found out it probably wasn't Uncle Clyde, I still kind of thought he was going to be a bad guy, and then he wasn't. He's just a good guy, which, like, mind blown. Like, what are you doing? You're gonna have to give me a second while I do my eyebrows, because I'm trying to make them super duper thin. Oh my gosh. What is happening? Holy crap. Ooh. Ooh. That's a look. Alright, can I match it on the other side? This is the question. We're not brushing these out. These are staying how they are. They're staying how they are. It is... Oh, I didn't show you what I was using. It's the same thing I always use. As I mentioned, so, and this is where we're gonna get into the KKK discussion. And interestingly, apparently in the 1920s in Oregon, there was actually kind of a brief period of time where the KKK kind of like took over the state. Like, they had a lot of people in, like, not just in local power, but also like congressional power, like the state house and everything. And it was, I don't know, it was really interesting. That, if you're interested in that, once you read the book, you can also read the author's note. Any mention at all of the KKK is kind of bone-chilling to me. But you're seeing this whole plot where they lurk in the shadows and then emerge just full of hatred right at the end, and it's terrifying. I mean, I was, like, if I hadn't been reading the story in bed, I would have been on the edge of my seat, because it just, I mean, I told you, the author is very, very good at writing a captivating world that it just draws you in, and so you feel like you're really there. And so when your two main characters are a biracial girl and a gay guy, already, I mean, they face a decent amount of just, you know, your everyday racism, and then on top of it you throw the fully active KKK, which at the beginning of the book, like I said, it kind of lurks under the surface, because they're like, well, our KKK, it's the Oregon KKK, who, how many times am I gonna have to say this in this review? So, I mean, it starts off the book with even Hanali being like, I mean, like, well, it's the, like, I can't see how the KKK is involved. I mean, they're just an organization, like, they raise money for the education board. I mean, they're not that bad, like, whatever. And then, again, there's these darker threads happening. There's more going on underneath the surface than there seems, and there's also, like, kind of this subset of them that are made up of, like, young men, and they have their initiation by, like, tormenting people, and they have, and this may be extremely triggering, fair warning, necktie parties, which is where you do a mock lynching, and they discover partway through that this is what had happened to Hank, Hanali's father. They had kind of lured him to the dock. They lured him there and then did I don't even want to say it. They did that to him and let him go under the, like, basically assumption that they were going to try and scare him out of town. But this affected him to the point where he had a heart attack, and that's why he kind of fell into the road, got hit by the car, and then his body couldn't take it and he passed, which is very sad. But that's kind of the mystery aspect, and there's more to it than that. And yeah, it just, that whole ending is just terrifying. Of course, the end of Hamlet, you know, you have the duel between Laertes and Hamlet. In this version, there's not really a duel. Oh wait, I need to do my concealer. But in this one, there's a moment where, like, Lawrence is, like, threatening to beat Hanali up, like, stay away from my sister, and they used to be, like, childhood friends. Lawrence was kind of Hanali's almost kind of sort of first love, and then all of a sudden one summer he just kind of changed. At the beginning of the book, she's not really sure what happened, but, like, he's the one who taught her how to use a gun. He's the one who told her to protect herself from, you know, people that might try to harm her in life. I mean, she's just really kind of come to terms with the fact that Lawrence changed and she doesn't understand why. And then his plot is sad but interesting. I mean, honestly, his character, it seems very well developed, and his, to me, is just very, very, very sad. We find out that the reason that Joe accidentally hit Hank that night is because he'd been caught having sex in a car with another guy, and the guy had run away. So the deputy only really saw Joe and said, like, he begged for him to keep it quiet. You know, my dad can't know, da 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 da. And so he's kind of not recklessly driving, but a little bit, and he, you know, ends up hitting Hank. And we find out throughout the story, like, the other boys didn't really pay much attention to it. Towards the very end, you find out that this other boy was Lawrence. And it's just like this, it's this big dramatic reveal, like, oh crap, Lawrence was kind of like Joe's first love. And then in this, like, confrontation, Lawrence, like, vehemently denies it. He's like, no. And, like, Lawrence is also part of this youth of the KKK. He's like trying to hide who he is by being the bully. It's just, it's really, really sad. But I mean, I think there's a lot of realism in that. But what I wrote in my notes was, he's just a boy trying to bury who he is underneath a load of hatred. You know, because this book ends while Lawrence is still young, we don't really know how Lawrence's story ends. So I mean, there's that kind of ambiguity to it. Like, he could change, he might not, unfortunately. Yeah, the entire build-up and climax was just so freaking intense. Like, literally on the edge of my seat. Like, the sudden turnaround of, like, Hanali wants to go to the dock. Like, when she finds out that it was the dock and not Uncle Clyde, she wants to go there. She wants to uncover this mystery. Her mom, like, Hanali, this is a bad idea. You know, it's only whites served there. This is a bad idea. And Hanali's like, I'm going. And it's just, oof, oof. But from there, the plot just goes, like, it's super intense, it's super condensed, and oh my gosh, everything happens all at once. Find out that there's, like, another necktie party planned for Joe. Like, and Hanali's been hiding Joe kind of this entire time, as soon as she decided to trust him. And so Clyde is trying to get them all out of there. He was like, we have to leave, it's no longer safe, everything is happening all at once. And then Hanali goes to try and help Joe. They get captured by the KKK, and knowing the original plot of Hamlet, I was expecting, like, some kind of shootout between, like, Hanali and Lawrence. I'm expecting everyone to die, except maybe Joe, because, you know, Horatio is pretty much the only one that survives the original. So I'm like, okay, I'm just expecting maximum death going into this, and especially because, you know, it's been built up so much and it's getting so intense so fast and so terrifying. Oh my gosh, it was literally, I was like like, my mom tried to talk to me, I'm like, shush, I'm reading. Like, things are happening. Ugh. Like, it went straight into, like, thriller territory, like, and this is, oh my gosh, it was so scary. It was so scary, guys. I was like, I'm glad I had my anxiety meds that day, guys. It was so much. And I was just like, oh my gosh, Hanali gonna die? Hanali gonna die? And I don't want her to die. And then, everyone lives. And there's this moment. That was my favorite thing, because, again, I don't really like suspense thrillers, and I love my happy endings. And while they very much flip the tragedy script on its head, and no one except, there's, like, one character who dies. And it's very clear at the end that Hanali states, my life will not end in tragedy. It's this hopeful ending. After all of the terror and suspense and thriller and mystery, you get this good, happy, satisfying ending, and I'm like, yes, give that to me. I love it. And I'm so happy. And Hanali saves the day. Everything comes full circle. The characters come full circle. There's some redemption, and I haven't talked too much about Joe's relationship with his parents much, but even that has its little moment of a satisfying ending. There's an oak, like this oak tree next to the dock that has the names of the people that the KKK is after, like, carved into it. I want to talk about foreboding. Joe has a conversation with his pastor father, and he says, what would it take to get you to believe in God again? Which Joe never said he didn't believe in God. He was like, my father just assumed that because I'm gay it means I don't believe in God anymore. And so he says, well, like, if that tree would fall down as an act of God, that would make me believe again. And so his father comes up with an axe and said, well, let's chop it down. And so they chop down this tree as an act of God. And it's just this nice little heartwarming moment. And like it's not like a perfect happy ending, like there's obviously still some like rough edges, but that makes it all the more satisfying because it feels real. And I loved it. They're moving up to Washington, which has some more lax laws than Oregon does. Yeah, it's so hopeful. It's so satisfying. 10 out of 10. Like I just love the way that the tragedy script was just, it was followed so well and then flipped, and I loved it. I loved, like, I'm gonna read you this last line because I loved the last line, and I told you I love this author's writing style so much. I absolutely have to read more of her work. The last sentence is, for me, the rest was not silence. It was loud and powerful and melodic. I love how she took those elements of the original story, because for those of you who don't know, the last, like, you can tell how worked up I am about this because I'm like kind of out of breath. Hamlet's last words are, the rest is silence. And so for her to say the rest is loud and powerful and melodic, she took her own future, her own fate in her hands, and she's just like, my life will not end in tragedy. This is not how it's going to end. I refuse to let it end this way. And just so good. So I am going to real quick do my lipstick without really talking because oh boy, I need to get that Cupid's Bow 1920s lip, so let's go. By the way, note on the mascara I used, it smells exactly like Flonase, which if you were a child with allergies, you know exactly what that smells like. It's bringing back some memories, man. I wish I had a tissue. Like, it kind of makes my nose water a little bit. Okay. Alright guys, so this is the final look. Got some very 1920s starlet going. We got our Rosebud Cupid's Bow lips. We got our extremely thin eyebrows. Very heavy rounded eye look. Big lashes. Rosy cheeks. We're there. Okay, summary. So 5-star read. Love, 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 love. It's that good. It's so good. Please read it. I love how thoughtful the author was when she handled very intense, heavy subjects, like dealing with racism, with the homophobia, with all of the stuff, using these. She very specifically avoided using some of the most hurtful words, even when dealing with racist characters, and you could tell how much thought and effort she put into making this a very thoughtful but still realistic tale. And just, it was so good. I felt so much for all of the characters, every single one. I mean, even like Lawrence, who if you didn't watch the middle part, I mean, he has a very, very complex kind of sad character, and even him, who did some bad things, you still felt for him. And it just, overall, amazing characters, amazing plot. I loved the author's writing style. It is so well done. It's just all around extremely strong. I think if you love Shakespeare, you will love it. If you love thrillers, you will love it. If you don't love thrillers, you might still love it. It's just a beautifully written, atmospheric, amazing book. Absolutely recommend. I'm so excited about this book. I need to own it. I got it from the library, now I need to own it. And I definitely want to read some more of Kat Winter's books, because if the rest of them are as good as that, like, they've just found a new favorite author. Like, whew. Yeah, I just consumed it all in an afternoon because it's just that good. It's a great retelling. Please give it a read. And not everything in this book is as it seems, which is all the more fun, honestly. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I had so much fun with this book look. I think my 1920 starlet is coming through strong. I mean, I'm assuming that I'm going to put a black and white in post. Film noir. No, that's more 50s, 40s. But black and white starlet. Okay, done. Looking at myself in the mirror now, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It's awesome. Great characters, great story, all around good. My makeup even turned out okay. My eyebrows had me terrified, but they look like sisters. Maybe not twins, but sisters. so we're good. So thank you so much for joining me